20 people on now. So hello, Kristen and Megan and David and Adrian and Tammy. So I'm Jax West. I own Stephen Avery Project. I am not related to the family. I'm just a supporter. So we're going live tonight. So if anybody wants to discuss the new part 2 or anything about the case, we can discuss together, and go ahead and fire your questions at me. If I'm able to answer, I will. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer. I typically stay on until I get through everybody's questions or comments, or until Facebook boots me off, which happened in our MAM gossip yesterday. I think I was live, and then eventually it booted me. So until then, let's see. Also, I do not typically, if people start talking to each other in there, that you're applying to each other, then I just skip those. Tonight, somebody's going to come on at some point and try and help me through this. So, because we get asked a lot of the same stuff, because I realize not everybody gets on it at the same time. So you'll miss the beginning of it, and you may ask a question that's already been answered. So somebody else is going to be trying to type the answers there, but she's not on yet. She won't be joining us for like another 15 minutes or so, I think. All right, so Eric says, watching the episode with the chapstick on the found bullet from the garage. Yeah, that's ugh. And hi, Kathy, and hello everybody that's saying hello. Monica says, what's the current status on it? So Kathleen had gotten an extension on Stephen's case, so she will be filing December 20th. And Brendan's case is kind of in a standstill right now. It had gone to the Supreme Court, and they denied to hear the case. So I think it's pretty much just waiting around to see what happens with Stephen's case and what Kathleen's got. So nothing new legal wise, just now with the part 2 coming out on Friday, what we have seen now from that. Tino says, will there be a part 3? I would think so. I know the documentarians say that they're not opposed to doing another season. And since, both these cases are still going, there's a good chance. Kathy says, what's next? I think I just covered that case-wise. And then we'll see what else Kathleen is able to dig up now that Making a Murderer 2 is out, if there will be more people that will come forward. All right, so that's a bunch of people asking the current status. I think I covered that. Alina feels sorry for both of them. Yeah, I think everybody. And now, and this one says, and now it just, sorry, when a lot of questions come in at once, it starts to scroll up, and then I miss the people's. So Vicky says it makes her angry, and yeah, so it makes you sad and it makes you angry. Let's see. Okay, as it just keeps scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. So if you ask a question and I didn't get to it, go ahead and submit it again. Since it's not me skipping your thing, it's now my thing is scrolling and it doesn't let me go back up to get people's stuff. Oh, somebody was joking. I was just about to answer that one. Rachel says, can anything be done for Brendan anymore? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with our system. you think it's over and then it's not. There's always a thing that they can go back down to a lower court if they find new evidence, and if they're able to prove this new evidence should get them a new trial or an evidentiary hearing and all that. So it's not over. It's just Brendan's case is harder because he confessed. And we all know that it was coerced confession, but still that's the bottom line. He confessed. There's no physical evidence. They have nothing on Brendan other than his confession. And then all they have on Stephen is the stuff they planted and circumstantial. So Emma says, is there any way to help Stephen's parents? I am waiting to hear back from Kathleen Zellner. Her entire team is out of town right now working on another case. So I haven't heard from her yet, but I will only follow what Kathleen says on how to help the family. So when you see a GoFundMe page, or if you see stuff is being sold, shirts, bumper stickers, anything like that, don't give your money to any of that. I don't care where you're getting that information from or who says they're setting that up. There has just been a lot of shadiness that's gone down with people taking money that is supposed to be going to help Stephen and Brendan. So I'm going to find out from Kathleen what we can do so the supporters can help. So please, please, please don't buy anything. Don't put any money in a GoFundMe. You can donate straight to Kathleen Zellner off of her website. And I do know that some people have issues with that and they don't want to donate there because her website says it goes to help with his legal bills, and they don't want to help his legal bills. They want to help Stephen, like to put money in his commissary or something like that. So let me talk to Kathleen. I should be talking to her in the next couple days, or somebody else from her office, so we can get that straightened out on how you can help financially if that's what you're looking to do. So until then, please, 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 please do not give your money anywhere or buy anything. Kurt says, should the coroner be worried for her safety, or has she relocated? I don't know. That was a big shock in Making a Murderer 2, Part 2. We have heard about that from other cases. There's another case that she had responded to the scene in Manitowoc where a boy was hit by a car, a hit and run, and the police had been at a party and then raced to the scene, and an officer ran the kid over again. And then when the coroner arrived on the scene, they told her to make sure that her report said that the boy was already dead when they ran him over the second time. And she said, if that's what the evidence shows, that's what my report will reflect. So they knew prior to Stephen's case that she wasn't somebody who was going to play ball and, cover up for the thin blue line. Where she's at now, I don't know, but I feel for her that, and she did the best she can. And I know there's people that have been upset with her and said she should have tried harder, but look what they've done to Stephen. Look what they're capable of. So she tried to testify, so I give her props in, so yeah. Misty says, I'm so sorry, haven't been on the page forever. Who are you? So my name is Jax West. I own the Stephen Avery Project. Curtis Bussey is who started this right after the first part of Making a Murderer aired. And then he ran it for almost a year. until he decided it was time for him to step away. He had a young child and his wife was pregnant with another, and he had to, put more time into his family and working to support his family. So I have been running it ever since. I am not related to the family. I am just a supporter. So April just asked, where is Curtis? And I think I just answered that, so I'm not going to go back over it. Can Brendan not write a confession that his confession was coerced? He has. Brendan has said that he was coerced, but, they don't seem to care. Cindy Lou says, can we have the family vouch for you? What family do you want to vouch for me? Because I'm not beholden to the family. The only person that I owe anything to or that I care about is Stephen and his parents. So this is not a family group. This is not a family page. This is a Stephen Avery support page. And I do talk to Stephen on the phone, and he knows who I am, and he knows about this page and is good with what I do. So there's no need for family to vouch for me. How are Mama and Papa Avery? So Dolores had her heart procedure. She is home from the hospital. I talked to Stephen last week, and Stephen said that she was doing better. She was having a hard time seeing, but that was due to the procedure and that she should get her sight back. Stacy's saying, can we buy Avery salvage yard sweatshirts? No. Do not buy anything. There is a lot of stuff that goes on with certain people trying to sell stuff. So please do not. Emma says, Brendan seems to have special needs, does he? I think they need to look at that. My brother is similar in a lot of ways and is autistic with Klinefelter syndrome. The similarities are a lot. Brendan has a low IQ. He's very sweet. I used to talk to him on the phone. He's just a really sweet, nice boy. I realize he's technically a man now, but when I used to talk to him on the phone, he still wanted to talk to me about Pokemon and video games and stuff like that. So he's just a sweet kid, and I don't think he's been tested for anything like that. They only had tested his IQ. Ashley says, what is going on with the new details coming forward from residents of Manitowoc who finally decided to come forward? If you're talking about a post that I made here today on Stephen Avery Project, I can't comment on that. I referred that person to Kathleen, and that's all I will say on that. Terry says, I think Brendan's mom is going through hell as her other son is a suspect and poor Brendan is in prison. Poor lady, I feel for the families on all sides. Okay. Yes. Sorry, I'm trying to, these are just scrolling so fast. Tammy says, I'm pretty certain that ex-boyfriend helped get the car on the Avery property, but do you think he's the one who killed her? My opinion is that Bobby killed Teresa Hallback, and Scott helped, and that Ryan Hilgas helped the police plant the vehicle on to the salvage yard. I believe that the witness who saw the RAV4 parked on Cuss Road, when he told Colburn about it at the gas, was it a gas station? And then Colburn had called in the plates. I believe he was looking at the vehicle at that time. And the car is locked. They went to Teresa's house, and with Ryan's help, they were able to get the spare key, which was later planted in Stephen's bedroom. That's how then when they opened that vehicle, they got the day planner out that she had been writing on it the day that she was last seen. And so that Ryan Hilgas was trying to help frame who he thought was a guilty man. And that Scott Blodorn, the roommate, and Michael Hallbach might be involved in that as well. So people who are going over the same things I've already said, discussed, I'm not going to go over again, because it's the only way I can try and keep up with this stuff in any way, shape, or form. Betty says, it may have been addressed and I may have missed it, but where actually was Brendan on the 31st October? Was he at home? Only asking out of interest, because it occurred to me that I must have missed, and now it's scrolled, so I can't get the last couple words on that. Brendan, when first questioned by police, he came home from school, went in, he played video games, talked to his mom when his mom came home from work, and before she went out with Scott, and then went by Stephen, because Stephen had called and invited him over for a bonfire. They drove around in a golf cart and picked some stuff up to put in the fire, watched the fire, and then Brendan went home at like 9 or 10 o'clock. I can't remember which time. Okay, scrolling down. And Christy Lynn, who is on here right now, she's the one that is now going to try and answer the things that I missed or that has been doubled up. So Christy Lynn will be replying to you, typing out on here. Zan says, Bobby killed her and then Scott tried to cover up what he could for Bobby. That's what I think. Ashley says, how is it not obvious to the courts that with all this new evidence and the specialists that Kathleen hired from non-biased forensic companies compelling enough for the courts, and it now scrolled up and I can't get it anymore. I don't know. All I can keep saying is that our legal system is horrible, and I don't understand how this all works, because there's just so much there that shows that they're both innocent. And there, that question is again, Ashley. So, but I think I answered that. Do you think Hallbeck's ex-boyfriend intentionally committed the crime near Stephen Avery's house? No, I do not. I do not think Ryan Hilgas killed Teresa Hallbeck. I believe that he helped frame Stephen, that law enforcement convinced them that it was Stephen who did this and that he was going to get away with it due to his suit against them that the depositions had just started. So they helped in any way possible to frame who they thought was guilty. Crystal says, how do I go about writing to Brendan? We can get that posted in here, his address. Brendan is the one you would most likely hear back from. Brendan does like to try and write to his supporters that write to him. The advice I give to you on writing letters to anyone, though, is on your actual letter, write your return address on it, because the prison will open the envelopes, and it might make your return address unreadable. So therefore, they can't write you back. So write it on your letter inside as well. Yes, Katie, and there is a pinned post at the top of Stephen Avery Project that has how you can write to both Stephen and Brendan. Did the roommate and Bobby know each other prior? Not that I'm aware of. That. And then PJ says, because when Colburn went to Teresa's apartment, Ryan, Scott, and her brother were there. Colburn told them he found the RAV. Mm-hmm. Anna says, do the cops who were originally involved have family in the field or courts? If so, could that be why nothing seems to be going anywhere? Support from Alabama. Well, the thing is these cases always go back to the original judges. And so it's really hard to get a judge to go, oh, okay, maybe I was wrong here and let's, do it again. So, and it's also because our judicial system just sucks. And so this will be my political plug for y'all is we've got a November 6th election coming up. Early voting, I know in Illinois started today where it's widely open. And not just having to go vote at the election commission, but you should be looking at who's running for office in your area and the whole ballot, your judges, your attorney generals, all that. Because like in Wisconsin, so for Stephen and Brendan, because this is a question we get all the time, is why doesn't the president pardon them? The president can't because their cases are state cases, not federal. President can only pardon a federal case. So the only person who can pardon them is the governor, who in Wisconsin is Scott Walker. And Scott Walker says he believes in our judicial system. And if you're found guilty, you're guilty, and he won't pardon anyone. So it's in Stephen and Brendan's best interest if in this November 6th election, Scott Walker doesn't win, because maybe they'll have a better shot with the next governor to get a pardon. So all of you out there, look into who's running, where you're at, and see how they feel about the wrongfully accused. And, if you need to vote people out, get them out. So Emma says, why did Brian have the diary? Brian didn't have the diary. Are you talking about Ryan Hilgas? So Ryan Hilgas had access to Teresa's home and even moved in there for a little bit. And if you're talking about the Daily Planner, I believe it's because he was with Manitowoc Sheriff's Department to help plant the vehicle at the salvage yard. Randa says, might have missed it, but will there be a new trial? When will we find out what will happen from all this stuff? Kathleen, and now it's scrolled. We're waiting. Kathleen doesn't file for Stephen until December 20th, and Brendan has no date in sight. So we're just waiting around. Jess says, I think it was the boyfriend and the brother who did it. Brendan didn't do it, and neither did Stephen. The truth will come out and they will be free. Shannon says, Bobby won't go see him in prison. Bobby lied in court and has changed his story. Stephen has never changed his story. It has not changed. He remains, and now it's scrolled up and I can't read the rest. That is not true. Bobby has visited Brendan in prison, but it's rare. He doesn't do it a whole lot. I would say out of all of Brendan's brothers, Blaine is the one who has visited him the most. But so Bobby has. It's basically when Barb makes him go. So like Christmas, that kind of stuff. Okay, thank you. And thank you so much, Christy, as I'm seeing you replying to somebody. Anne says, does Netflix not financially support the family? No, they do not. Yeah, there's not the big payday from Netflix like people would think there would be. So Brendan and Stephen sign deals, and that's about that. So no, the family is not being supported by Netflix. Ashley says, what happens if Scott Walker remains in office? Well, then that means there's no chance of a pardon for Stephen or Brendan. And then the only avenue for them is hopefully they'll get a judge who will be open to a new trial, or just something happens to really prove who did this and able to get them out. It just, so if Scott Walker remains in office, a pardon is off the table. People talking about West Memphis 3. And if you didn't know, for the people that are talking about West Memphis 3, Brendan's lawyers, Laura Nyrider and Stephen Drizzen, were part of representing Damian Eccles in the West Memphis 3 case. Okay, that's Christy replying to somebody. Vote, and PJ saying, vote out Schimmel, Walker, and Buckmere. So PJ's obviously a Wisconsin resident, or at least knows a lot about what's going on up there. Shay says, what evidence has been found since the show? Are you saying since part 2? Because if you're saying since part 2, that's, the new stuff that we have right now. It is what we saw in there. And then there are a few other things that weren't in there, like the deer that Bobby slaughtered in the garage that many think was to cover up Teresa's blood in there. And then I know Kathleen has other stuff that she hasn't revealed yet. And I don't know what that is either. I just know she's got more stuff. A couple people asking me, who do I think did it? I think Bobby Dassey killed Teresa Hallback, and Scott was a part of it after the fact. Chris says, I need to be petty here. The episode in MAM2 showing Ken and his wife walking into the courthouse. She walked and looked like the vile piece of shit she is. They are great for each other. Well, I was at that hearing. And I wrote an article about being there at that hearing that is up on the website freebrendan.org. And when I was in line to get into the courtroom, Kratz and his girlfriend were a couple people ahead of me in line. And so I took a picture of them, or took a picture of him, that he was in line with all the common folk to get in there, which I thought was humorous when press wasn't in line and the Hallback family wasn't in line, and Kathleen Zellner wasn't in line, but Kratz had to, be out there in line with the rest of us. And so then in my article, I talked about how sweaty he was. And I said how his girlfriend, because she was just his girlfriend at the time, kept, staring across courtroom to Amy and I. That's what it looked like. And she got so offended by it. And so she tweeted about me, and then she was saying I could be prosecuted because it's illegal to take pictures, but actually it's not illegal to take pictures in the hallway. There was a sign saying in the courtroom you can't take pictures. So yeah, that was funny. Somebody again asking for a GoFundMe. No GoFundMes. Do not, please do not give any money anywhere unless you're doing it, sending money to Kathleen Zellner's website through there, or send it to Dolores directly. Other than that, please wait. I am waiting to hear from Kathleen on how for all the supporters to properly help Dolores and Alan. So until then, please do not give your money anywhere. I can't say this enough on how much that money that supporters have sent has been misused. Michelle says, hi, Jax, just got on. I heard Barb. What did she do this time? I don't think I said anything about Barb yet. So nothing new, Michelle, where I'm just taking people's comments about the case or Making a Murder Part 2. Ashley says, have you talked to Bobby or his mom? What are they thinking about how Kathleen mentioned Bobby at the end? I've never talked to Bobby or met Bobby. I used to talk with Barb. We no longer speak. Barb did post on Stephen Avery Project the other day, again claiming that her family is innocent. So she's doing the same damage control she always does, is just trying to protect Bobby and Scott at all costs, and is okay for Brendan and Stephen to take the fall for the real guilty people. Julie says that I'm very impressed with Kathleen. I am too. I defend her a lot. Yes, there is, Christy. I defend Kathleen a lot because there are people who like to second guess what she does. And she is the best defense attorney on the planet to help to free the wrongfully accused. So I find it laughable when somebody wants to question what she's done or and try and rip on her, because how many people have you freed? I loved seeing just how involved she is in these recreations and all that. And I know there will be haters that will say she's only doing that because cameras are around. But me living in Illinois, and she is her office is about 5 minutes from my house. So she does a lot of cases in my area. And so there's the Riley Fox case where her father, Kevin Fox, was found guilty for killing his daughter, Riley. And Kathleen has freed him. And one of the tests that she did is she went to a farm and got a dead pig that would be the size and weight of Riley to throw off of a bridge and see where the current takes it. And she's part of that, you know. So yeah, she's great. Nikki says, why would Scott save Bobby yet destroy Brendan? I can't understand that. Well, they weren't, my opinion. I do not think anybody had any idea that Brendan would get caught up in this. Because originally when this crime occurred, if it occurred by Scott and Bobby, they weren't framing Stephen for it. That's the police. And so nobody thought that Brendan would get mixed up in it. But it only be Brendan, what happened with him is he was with Stephen that night. And so in order for the sheriff's department to push their narrative, they now have to have Brendan say something incriminating. And they were pushing him initially. They just wanted him to say he saw Stephen do something. But Brendan's not able to pick up those cues like that. As you see, even when you watch their interrogations, you know, what did they do to her head? Brendan cut her, punched her, cut her throat. You know, he's just searching for whatever it is. And then it's like, and then they get frustrated and it's like, I'm just going to come out and say this. Who shot her in the head? So they couldn't get what they wanted out of Brendan. So then Brendan ended up, they went the other way, and now they have to have Brendan part of it. So, sorry. Did either Brendan or Stephen or anyone take a polygraph? Polygraphs are not admissible, and they're not reliable. Stephen, I know Stephen offered to take one, but there's just no point in the polygraph. I can tell Kathleen means business. I'd love to watch her work. I would not want to meet her in a dark alley. Yeah. Victoria says, how was the ex still dismissed as a potential? Because they only want Stephen. They were desperate to make Stephen go away so the $36 million lawsuit goes away. So that's why the ex is dismissed and they don't look at anything because they want Stephen. Debbie says, I just want to scream on how MPD was collecting evidence at the Avery residence, but told the coroner she would be fired and feared for her life. Yeah, and she wasn't a part of the original Stephen case, the Penny Bernstein one. But Sherry Culhane was, but it was okay for her to be running tests again that she then contaminated, and they write a note saying, put Teresa in Stephen's house or garage, but again, they don't care. All they want is Stephen guilty. And this says, why isn't Kathleen Zellner Brendan Dassey's lawyer? Because he's had Stephen Drizzen and Laura Nyrider long before Stephen had Kathleen. And they're good lawyers. And they're very passionate about juvenile. So again, Damien Eccles from West Memphis 3, and there's other cases. So he's got good lawyers. He, and that, as I said, he's had way longer than Stephen's had Kathleen. Stephen was representing himself for years and years. He had no money and had nobody who was willing to take his case. So Terry says, Kathleen is amazing and doing a fab job. In my opinion, she should make all the family, Bobby, etc., take that brain test, then we will know the truth. Yeah. Leslie, did anyone else notice the fizzy white foam in Brendan's water bottle? No, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't notice that. Leslie, and how fast Brendan went from talking to nodding his head. Shannon says, can this case be tried in another state, considering all of the dirty politicians and police in that area? Well, if it goes like when Brennan's case made it to the 7th Circuit of Appeals, that's here in Illinois. It's in Chicago. So you have to keep, you just have to keep working our system. Oh, I'm getting messages too. What is this? Okay, sorry. Mike says, Brendan's lawyer should have mentioned to the Court of Appeals Kratz leaking the confession hours after getting it in detail on the news when asked a question about getting 2 sentences. When Kratz is on his dirt, his voice gets extra high pitch. Yeah. Paul says, Jax, is it true that Bobby changed his last name to Anthony? Well, his Facebook name is Bobby Anthony, but I assume Anthony is just his middle name. He just dropped his last name, to try and have some kind of privacy. So it's not a name change. It's, lots of people do that where they don't put their last name on there. Crystal says, I want to thank you for doing this. A lot of us support Stephen and Brendan, and it is great to have someone like you keeping us up to date. Oh, thank you. Leslie says, Brendan was drugged. Watch the water bottle they give him. Water doesn't foam. When are you saying he was drugged? Is it when he was talking to Michael Kelly and having to draw the stuff, or is it in interrogation? Shannon says, I already answered that. Elizabeth says, without Brendan, they have nothing on Stephen. Well, they do, because they have all the planted stuff. So they have the RAV4 there that has Stephen's non-existent sweat DNA on the handle and his Q-tip planted blood in the front of the car. And then they have the valet key, but still haven't found her main key with the fob and her other keys. That's gone. But they have her spare key in his bedroom that Teresa was able to hold her key all the time and not have any DNA on it, but Stephen's DNA was on there. And then they were able to find a bullet in a dusty garage, that there was no dust on the bullet, and that has no evidence of going through someone's head, but has wood and paint and cotton fibers on from using a Q-tip and wiping it on a chapstick and then transferring that to the bullet. So they have all this evidence on Stephen that's all planted and circumstantial, and they didn't use Brendan in Stephen's trial. There was no mention of Brendan in there. So Stephen and Brendan were prosecuted for the same crime by the same douchebag, yet completely different scenarios. They did not use Brendan in Stephen's trial because originally they wanted Brendan to say that Stephen did this and he saw it. And then when Brendan recants everything they told him to say, then they knew they couldn't depend on him to testify against Stephen. So they dropped the Brendan angle in Stephen's. Hallie is saying, will he ever be freed? Well, we have to stay positive. And I believe eventually they both will be. But our system just takes a long time. And now here I am bad with numbers as usual, but Kathleen says it typically takes her, is it 17 years to free somebody? And she's only been on Stephen's case for 2 years, right? So our system, it's really quick to lock them up and then takes forever to get them back out. Beck says, is there any truth in that Steve brought leg irons and cuffs leading up to Teresa's death? So those were pink fuzzy things that was bought for sex with Jody. And actually, he and Barb have the same pair. Barb has them at her house as well. And just because you find that somebody has handcuffs doesn't mean that they've shackled somebody to a bed. There is no proof at all that she was ever strapped to his bed. They only have that from Brendan's coerced confession. There are no markings on the bed that would show that handcuffs had been on there. And again, Brendan wasn't used in Stephen's case, so Stephen wasn't tried for using handcuffs or leg irons. A lot of people are asking who is paying Kathleen. She's doing this pro bono, and she's getting donations from supporters. Teresa says, have you gotten any further information from the prior coroner who they did not allow to go to the burn site? Can law enforcement get charged for not allowing her access in the murder scene? They can't be charged for that. I don't know what she's doing now. I'm sure we'll get something that will do a, where are they now thing to update us from when part 2 was filmed. So some newspaper or magazine will do that. Julie says, juror intimidation by other jurors an issue? It should be, because we do know there were 2 people on Stephen's jury who were planted there by the state who either worked for the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department or were married to somebody in the Sheriff's Department. And one of them was mean and was bullying people to say guilty. We've got people talking about sweat DNA. Yeah, there's no such thing as sweat DNA. Teresa says, is there a possibility she was shot accidentally during their hunting? Has that been has that been thought about? That was my original theory. But have you seen Kathleen's reenactment? They only showed part of that on Making a Murderer 2. There, it goes a lot further than that. And it is on YouTube. And we have posted it here in Stephen Avery Project before. So if you watch that, it leads you to think that it wasn't a hunting accident, and this was an intentional chase her down to kill her. Crystal says, if someone was handcuffed to Stephen's bed, there would be scratches on the bedpost from the struggle. There was none. The truth will come out, and it's sad that 2 innocent people are spending their life in prison. And it scrolled up and I missed the rest. Sorry. Bailey says, has KZ tried to do testing on the headlight again? They won't give her access to the RAV4. So she can't. And I have no idea why she doesn't have access to the RAV4. Kurt says, they said they were going hunting. Did anyone check if they had hunting licenses? They have hunting licenses. Hunting is like their most passionate pastime there. That like even Barb takes all of November off of work just so she can go hunting because that's deer season. And Bobby and Scott belonged to the same hunting club back then. And so did a judge or two that's involved in this case, also belonged to the same hunting club with Bobby and Scott. Chris says, it's interesting that Scott Blodorn isn't talking with Zellner. Do you think he is still friends with Ryan? I feel Scott could give a lot of insight while clearing his name. That's who I've always said too, that Scott Blodorn would be the easiest one to come forward and speak. And I know there was something, and I don't remember what it was, but Scott did at one point to Ryan Hilgas on something. But I not saying he killed her or anything like that. But yeah, so Scott Blodorn is really the one that should come forward and get his immunity and tell what he knows. Erica says, do Brendan and Stephen ever talk? No, they do not. Nikki says, there was nothing that places her in the room, just a key that showed up 7 to 8 days later. Right. Because I know guilters will say, well, the Auto Trader magazine was in there. That doesn't prove she was in there. So that's a stupid thing. There's absolutely no proof she was ever in that trailer. And Stephen's not the cleanest guy in the world. And it's a little trailer. And you didn't find hair? Nothing? My hair, I shed like crazy. So after the first Making a Murder, I was like, oh man, I could, be looked at for a crime because I'm sure my hair is everywhere. So there's just no way. There's no way that Stephen's going to be able to clean up his trailer that you would not see evidence of somebody murdered in there. But again, Stephen isn't prosecuted for her being murdered in his bedroom. It's out in the garage. But then there's nothing in the garage either. You're not finding any hair in the garage. You're not finding any blood. Nothing. Just a bullet that's found later. Heather said, how did the judges in the 7th Circuit Court not see that special care wasn't taken with Brendan? I don't know. There were a couple judges there that clearly were on Brendan's, you wouldn't say Brendan's side. It's just that it's obvious to anybody with a functioning brain that he was coerced and that he's just somebody that's going to say what you want him to say. But so is it just that, that blue line that they're going to cover for each other? I don't know, but I don't know how people don't see poor Brendan was made to say what he said. Natasha says, didn't Brendan say her throat was cut in the bedroom? Yes. Where's the DNA? Bogus information, taking advantage of a young boy. Rebecca says, can someone just start a GoFundMe? Sorry, I'm trying to skip stuff that I've already said, but no GoFundMes. At this time, please, please, please don't give any money anywhere. We will post on Stephen Avery Project after I've heard from Kathleen Zellner on how to properly get money to Stephen or Dolores or Alan. Don't listen to anybody else in the family. Just wait for that, please, because people have been taking money left and right and trying to sell stuff left and right. So please don't. We will post here when we have where you can really send money if that's what you want to do. Dan says, do you think that Teresa's brother and ex-boyfriend had something to do with her murder? No. Or possibly something to do with her car? Yes. As much as Bobby and Scott are acting rather peculiar, it's strange. I couldn't help but notice, especially her ex-boyfriend kept smiling. Yeah, I believe they planted the car to frame who they thought was guilty. Sarah says, I agree with the GoFundMe for, okay, I'm sorry, I should scan something before I read it. No GoFundMe. Just wait, please, please. Rebecca says, why does some of the show say she was stabbed as cause of death? Then it says a bullet to the head caused her death. Which is it? Well, in both cases, though, they say she was stabbed and then shot. So for both Bobby and Stephen, they don't say stabbed for Scott, or for Scott. Yeah, Scott was a part of it. For Stephen. In Stephen's case, he shot her in the garage. In Brendan's case, she was stabbed, throat cut, hair cut, punched in the face, but she just wouldn't die. And then they dragged her out to the garage and shot her out there. No other court date, Zachary. Kathleen will be filing by December 20th. Marie says, so is it possible she left and Bobby followed her? Yes. During the time he said he was leaving to go hunting? Yes. And she tried to run back to Stevens for help, which is why the cadaver dog's trail is all over property. You said she ran for her life? No. I believe the cadaver dogs were following her car. Because where the car had driven through Cuss Road, down through past the hunting lodge, that the deer lodge or whatever they call it, that the rat ants had. And then the car eventually went from there through the quarry, down the conveyor road into the salvage yard. So they were following where her car had gone through. I don't think Teresa ran anywhere. I think Bobby got Teresa pretty quick. Amy says, do you think they will keep blocking their chances of a real retrial because they know it will most likely cost the state so much money if they are released? If so, can it be put to them they won't sue or sue at a reduced amount? I know they deserve the world, but being innocent and be home with family would mean more. That would be an Alford plea. And so that's what like the West Memphis 3 got out on, was an Alford plea, where you plead guilty while asserting your innocence and then you can't sue. So, but a lot of people that I advocate for, including Stephen, they don't want to admit guilt even in that. They want to be fully innocent. So I don't know if an Alford plea will be offered. So Shay says, is there a juvenile court that Brendan could have been at? Well, they decided to try him as an adult. So yeah, there could have been, but they went after him as an adult. What's your thoughts on why where did it go? And I lost that one. So sorry on whatever that was. Chloe, I just joined this page. Is this run by Stephen's family? No. Is there any way I can help his parents? Not yet. Stay tuned. Can we put money on Steven's books? I will post if Kathleen gives the go-ahead on that. Ronnie says Zellner is going live tomorrow on here. No, not on here. It will be on her Twitter. So I believe what you would have to do is she's going to be live tweeting about episode 2. So you would have to have it playing at your house or wherever you're at and be watching her Twitter, and then she will be posting comments as she watches it. Teresa says, are there any security cameras in the areas? Have they been checked at the boyfriends or anywhere around? Not back then. No, nobody had any cameras back then out in that area that you'd be able to see anything, or even now, you know. So, oh, somebody's having trouble getting on the StephenAveryCase.org site. And yes, you can donate on Kathleen's website. Stephen says, can't believe they're releasing certain evidence to Zellner. That car light is massive and the state knows it. Yeah. Lisa says, it's alarming and unnerving to see Bobby in the court hallway shaking hands. And now it's scrolled up so I can't get the rest, but it was shaking hands with Fassbender. Yeah, that doesn't look suspicious at all. And then I don't get things like, so Bobby and Scott and Barb all talked to, was it Fassbender who came out of retirement to question people again in November, you know, so about a year ago. So they'll talk to the state and continually help the state. And that's when Barb gave them Bobby's computer again for them to look at Bobby's computer. But they won't talk to Kathleen. Why won't you talk to the woman who can free Stephen and Brendan, but you'll talk to the state who put them there? It's pretty suspicious to me. Chris says, I noticed in MAM2 when Brendan called his mom, Scott was always taking over the conversation or talking first before Barb could answer. Yeah, and Scott always does that when Barb talks on the phone. It has to go on speaker and he has to be right there and he'll listen to it and then he keeps yammering over everything. Dan says, if we remember, think back to when they first searched the trailer. 2 cops found a letter. Oh, God. That makes me so mad. About a support group for the wrongfully accused, and they started laughing. I don't think he's going to make it. Also, that's when they said, let's get his shoes in case there's any other unsolved crimes. And those people are evil too and have done things like they burned a cross. The one woman, Wendy, burned a cross in another guy officer's yard, upset about something or another. It's been a long time since I've thought about that, so I can't remember exactly what it is, but yeah. Samantha says, I believe the brother-in-law and nephew did it. They were the only ones worried about an alibi. Yeah, and they're, you know, we happen to cross each other and know the exact time it is, and Scott decided he wasn't going to go hunting behind his own house, even though he's going to be picking up Barb shortly to take her back to Green Bay, because he had already been in Green Bay that morning, allegedly, to see his mother in the hospital. And then he's going to pick up Barb after work and take her back there. So instead of him just hunting at home where it's closer, he's going to drive somewhere else. Well, Bobby's going to go to his house. Yet Bobby's cell phone pings off a completely other direction. Kat says, this whole saga is mind-blowing. Makes me sick. They won't consider new evidence. They are too proud to admit they're wrong and be sued. Yep. Natasha says, stabbed, throat cut, no trace of blood where it supposedly happened. Come on. Chris said, all the torture and killing, but no defense wounds on Stephen or Brendan, even when they were cuffing her. I would be kicking and scratching. Yeah, but Bobby has scratches on his back that he claimed was from a puppy, but now Zellner's expert said those were fingernail scratches on his back. Christina says, where's all of her blood if she was stabbed in the house? Who tampered with Stephen's blood that was in evidence? Bobby. Bobby knew he was leaving. Bobby knew that he was bleeding. and had gone inside to get tape to tape his finger. Bobby is also able to get past Steven's German Shepherd Bear, who's chained up outside, and Bear didn't bark. Christy's got to run, so she's the one that's been answering your questions that I don't get to. Ian says that key is a spare key. Yes, no one drives around with just their car keys on the ring. Where are her house keys? Well, and that's something that you can see testimony from Thomas Pierce, who was her boss at the photography studio. And he talked about her being paranoid of losing her keys. And then there's the friend of hers that she went on vacation with not long before. It was like the weekend, not the weekend before, but but recently. And that they had even joked about her being afraid of losing a key and had made a fob out of, was it electrical tape or something like that? So if you're somebody that's paranoid of losing their keys, are you really going to keep all your keys on separate rings? So why would she only have a car key? Where's her house key? And where's the key to the photography studio? Why wouldn't it all be on the same key ring? And plus, when you look, you can Google RAV4 keys, and you'll see the one that they have is the valet key, not the engine key. And also, it's the short half of the, and now Christy's gone, and I can never remember what this is. Lanyard. Haha. The lanyard. So the big long piece, the one that usually then people put over their, around their neck to carry it, that's all not there. So Mary says, why didn't Steven's lawyers call in their own experts in relation to DNA testing that was done? Because they had little money and little help. They don't have the benefit of making a murderer and all the people that have been researching this and finding all this stuff out. They don't have the manpower. So they did the best. They did the best they could, but they definitely dropped the ball on plenty of things. MZ says, I reckon they've all only done this because Steve deserved compensation for being wrongly accused and they just didn't want to pay. Yep. Lori says, if the part 2 is playing now and he still is not free, how is there not enough evidence to prove him innocent? I know. Chrissy, is there some other way to read all the information on the case? Chrissy, are you the one that keeps saying you can't get into StephenAveryCase.org? Because that's where you can go if you're not. I don't know why you're not able to see it there. You can also look in the archives here at Stephen Avery Project because we've posted it all at some point. So search and see what you can find. Ian says, where is Brendan's DNA anywhere? Nowhere. Erica says, it's too bad they can't get a medium in to try and reconnect to Teresa. Could be a lead there. I know there was a medium at one point that said she knew something, a house or whatever, but I've never really followed it. Steven says, have you met Dolores and Alan? I've never met Alan. I've met Dolores twice. Kara says, everyone knows it was staged. Steven's lawyer will prove it. Game over. Ian says, all involved should take the brainwave scanner or hidden info test. Zachary says, the key in his room wouldn't there be more DNA on the key besides Steven's? And that's actually a test that Kathleen did, is that she brought a RAV4 key in and had Steven hold it for a couple seconds and release, and hold it and release, and hold it and release, and there was no transfer of his DNA on there. Yes, it's a Halloween decoration, this face in the window there, but I keep it up year round because it just freaks people out. Ian says, if Steven is willing, Kratz, Fassbender, and Colburn, etc. should. right? Yeah, the brain fingerprinting thing. MZ says your place looks cozy. Sorry, no, it's off the record. Oh, yeah, my place is a wreck right now because in between everything that's been happening in Steven's case and my job, and Amy was in for the weekend, everything's a wreck. Mary says, why didn't Steven lawyers get any experts of their own to cross-examine some of the evidence picked up at the scene? We don't know. B says, so Bobby and Scott are hunters and enjoy killing. Join the dots on a no-brainer. Guilty. Hannah says, is there proof that Barb's husband was at the hospital and at the time, like they said? Nope, there's no proof. Debbie says, praying for Steven's parents. My heart breaks for them. I'm sympathetic to Barb, but I think Scott is involved and she knows more than she's telling. Brendan should not be in prison and definitely not Steven. David says, Scott and Bobby are guilty as fuck. Not sure how police detectives can't see it, yet the rest of the world can. Obviously wanted Steven in prison. Right, that's it. They can see it, but they want Steven in prison. Ian says, why wasn't Kasich, that's her name, the coroner hired on the case? Because she won't lie for them. They needed somebody who would lie. Rena says, does it look like he will be released? Well, it doesn't look like it because it's not in court or anything. We're just hopeful that, and have trust in Kathleen, because Kathleen is the one who gets the most people who are wrongfully convicted released. Ben says, if he says, I will not sue, he will get it. Meaning the Alford plea. Victoria says, will Brendan never be released? Same thing that I just said about Steven. It's, I'm staying positive that they both will be released because it's just a crazy world to me for these two guys to be in prison when it's clear that they're innocent. Sam says, does Andrew Colburn still live in Manitowoc? Yeah, and he's still with the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. Debbie says, the photos of the bedroom proved Brendan's confession was bullshit, but they didn't care. They had 36 million reasons to frame Steven. Yep. Benjamin said, just finished the second season and left speechless. All the new evidence Zellner found, and yet the state is still putting up a fight. Yeah, they're going to fight it to the end. They don't want to have to pay not just Steven. Now they have to pay Brendan too. So Carol says, you think Bobby is smart enough to put the blood in the RAV4 and all the other evidence? Well, Bobby's not dumb. So would he be smart enough? Yeah. I'm still not sold on Bobby's the one that did that. I still believe all that stuff that's planted is enforcement. Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. Another, who are you? Sorry, just wondering. Are you admin for this page? Yes, I'm Jax West, and I own the Stephen Avery Project. Not related to family. I am just a supporter, but I do talk to Stephen. Ashley says, Bobby said in the affidavit that he saw Teresa leave and that Steve couldn't have done it. Then on the stand, he said he didn't see her leave and she went inside. Bobby is a lying motherfucker, LOL. Floor says, so if Bobby had scratch marks on his back, was it possible they had intercourse? Possible. Debbie said that was her spare key and Ryan gave it to Colburn. Dan says, Ken Kratz has one of the top 3 punchable faces on the planet. I concur. Zachary says, sounds like to me that someone washed that key down and placed Steven's DNA on that key. Mm-hmm. Jill says, so basically Bobby and Scott killed her and then the cops helped cover it up. How is the ex involved? I don't think the cops knew it was Scott and Bobby. I think originally when the cops went to frame Stephen, that they also thought he was guilty. That's just my belief. I don't know if I'm cutting this corrupt sheriff's department too much slack, but I think they thought he was guilty and thought he would get away with it. And so that's when the planting began. And the ex then helped plant the car there because the car was locked. They didn't have the key. They needed to move it. They needed it to drive. So they got the key from Teresa's house. Lisa says the state will never offer Stephen and Brendan an Alford plea, never ever. Why? Because Stephen can sue individuals after the fact. These cases are about corrupt individual people. An Alford plea outlines not being able to go back to the state. Aha! These pricks planted evidence outside of their responsibilities as law enforcement. Who is retired? Hello. Very interesting. Thank you, Lisa, for that. Julie says, white Jeep following the RAV4 that neighbor witnessed flying down his road toward gravel pit. And I believe I've heard that Colburn had a white Jeep at that time. Tabitha says, it's not even the evidence, it's they won't see his case, I thought. Yeah, but then they'll also say the evidence that she has, like the stuff with how they hid the CD from Bobby's computer and never turned it over to the defense. Then the judge said, well, even if you had it, it wouldn't have changed the outcome. So you're not getting a new trial based on that. Angie says, I think Jody was helping them to help herself. I don't think Jody was helping. Jody's a drunk. I don't think she's capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time. Carol says, they'll never be let out. The law enforcement has too much to lose other than just the case. Right. They'll never willingly let them out. It's up to Kathleen to prove who really did it. And Kathleen has had before where she's gotten the real killer to confess to free her client. So you never know what Kathleen is capable of. Kelly says, I was wondering about the ropes that was used to tie her arms in the bedroom, seeing how that's what Brendan drew in season 1. There were no ropes. Wasn't it supposed to be just the handcuffs, the pink furry handcuffs and shackles, leg irons, or whatever they're trying to call them? Okay. That scrolled on me again. Kimberly says, I don't really believe in mediums, but I'd be interested to see what she would have to say. And then Sam says, I read the article about the medium clairvoyant. It matches what part 2 showed us. It's shockingly similar. Sam, if you can find that link, please, post it in here or send it to us and we'll post it on the page, whatever you want to do, because I'm sure other people would be interested to read the article. MZ says, I've got to go to bed, but hopefully we'll catch the rest of this in the morning. Just hope they both are released soon. They're both decent people and deserve a happy life. Not all this done to them. Good night, MZ. Kat says, of course they do. They are trying to save face from the first screw up and falsely accused him. I agree. They are looking out for the state and paying out. Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry. People keep messaging me and stuff too. Tamara says, if Stephen gets released, what happens to Brendan's case? Would it have any effect? No. And that's something, and I believe Kathleen might have even tweeted something about this today. But another one of her cases, Ryan Ferguson, there was a documentary filmed about that case called Dream Killer. I don't know where you can see it. I don't know if you Google it, if you can find it, or if it's on YouTube somewhere, or you can just look up the Ryan Ferguson case. But that was, somebody was murdered in a parking lot and they had no leads. And then 2 years later, this guy, Charlie, went to the police and said that he dreamed that he killed the guy with his friend Ryan Ferguson. And so Ryan Ferguson was found guilty on that confession alone. And Kathleen was able to get Ryan Ferguson out, and Charlie has since recanted it, but he's still in prison. So it doesn't, because again, like Stephen and Brendan, Charlie confessed. Ryan Ferguson did not. Not related, Pat. I'm just a supporter. I own Stephen Avery Project. Whitney says, keep fighting. Kathleen is the best, fair, honest. Karma's a bitch, and it's going to catch up with the evil that killed that poor woman. Vicky says, surely there has to be someone to come forward with what really happened. So many people had to know what was going on behind the scenes. All the shady moves that were made. I just can't get my head around it. It's crazy. Kimberly says, the blood that was by where you put the key in, it looks like the size of a tip of a Q-tip. I agree. Tracy says, I cannot believe how many corrupt people are in this town. Yeah. Leslie says, I swear I feel there is no such Hallbeck family. It's all Hollywood. Sarah says, is anyone looking into a money trail to witnesses, police, etc.? There's so many people involved. How could this be kept secret and kept in an inner circle for so many years if no one is getting paid? There has been people following some money trails, but probably not what you would think. What addresses can we send the letters? Can we send letters to them? We have something pinned to the top of Stephen Avery Project that has both of their addresses on there. And we will post it again. I obviously can't do it right now at this time while I'm doing this because I'm trying to keep up with as many of these as I can before we call it a night. Zachary says, tell Stephen he's got support all the way from Columbus, Ohio. Stay strong, bro. Stephen does know that he's got supporters from all around the world, and he truly appreciates it. Zach says, I think Bobby, given his search history on his computer, could have had the knowledge to have tried framing Stephen. That's a good thought. Beck says, has Bobby's phone records been checked? Yes. Has they? Wait. Yeah, they had to have been since they're getting where his phone pinged off of. Just wondering if he had a thing with Teresa. He had a thing for Teresa. Because Stephen said, because Teresa had been there multiple times because, it's a salvage yard. So you're selling vehicles all the time. So Stephen said when Teresa would be there, after she would leave, Bobby would say to him, oh, your girlfriend was here today. So he always knew when Teresa was there and was looking for when Teresa was going to be there. Melina says, are there pictures of Bobby's back anywhere? Yeah, on that StephenAveryCase.org, they have all the exhibits too. So the picture will be in there somewhere of Bobby's back. Olivia says, if and when he gets out, I hope he moves far, far away. Stephen's will not leave his parents. So unless his parents will leave, he's not going to leave. Emma says, I'm so infuriated by MAM2. It's so clear and so outrageous. I agree. Brandon says, is Avery's land desirable to the county? Well, is it a judge or a cop? I can't remember. Who owns a competing salvage yard down the road or, not far from them. So, and their land is surrounded by quarry. So, I don't know. Debbie said the ex also helped by hacking Teresa and deleting things, then forgetting what he deleted. He got away with that. Mm-hmm. And then Vicky says, I agree. I think she was killed. The killer left. The cop found it. The plan kicked in. Possibly found out who did do it and continued to set Stephen up. Beck says, I can't see why the cops will help Bobby, Scott move car, etc. if they hated the Avery Dassey's family so much. Because when they moved the car, they didn't know it was Bobby and Scott that did it. In my opinion. I need to keep saying that. Zachary says, why wasn't anything ever said about that cop who radioed in Teresa's tags and wasn't even pulling her over? That's some serious corruption. I know. And I've said, why aren't they looking at his cell records? Because he called in her plates from his personal cell phone, not a police radio. So where was he when he called in that plate? Lori says the extra key could have been in her glove box. So when the cop called in her plate, he moved it. Could. Or could be in one of those hide-a-key things in a wheel well. Lisa says, a guilter told me KZ's experiments regarding the key and hood latch are caca because Stephen was so nervous and filled with panic, he deposited an enormous amount of DNA versus Zellner's actors that weren't under any pressure. I disagreed with him, but hopefully someone can make him realize he isn't thinking scientifically. Kathleen didn't just do it with actors. Pause. I'm on Facebook Live right now. So, yes, whatever you want to get. Okay. And that'll be my cue to get off when my boyfriend gets home from work. He's on his way home. She also did the key test with Stephen, and it was done multiple times, more than what you just saw. On Making a Murder. So the guilters can keep trying to, not look at actual facts. Natasha said, I remember from part 1, her brother listened to and erased all her voicemail. Always found that odd. Yeah. Rory says, I thought I read that Colburn retired in February. Did he? I thought he was still with them. I could absolutely be wrong on that. Zachary said, wouldn't you think that the family of Teresa's would want to know the truth now with all the scientific evidence that Ms. Zellner is bringing to the table? I would think so. I guess you never know until you're in that situation, but because I get that this is a horrible thing that happened to their family and you want to be able to move on with your life, but I wouldn't be able to move on without knowing for sure what happened. David said Teresa could appear in court today alive and they would still fight to keep Stephen and Brendan in prison. Corruption is sickening. Yes. Thank you. Heather says Dream Killer is on the ID channel on demand. I highly recommend you watch that and you will all fall in love with Ryan Ferguson's dad, Bill Ferguson. Love that man. Emma says, do the Hallbacks have a reason to want Stephen away too, to frame him? I don't believe so. I think the Hallbacks initially thought Stephen was the one because that's what law enforcement was telling them, and they have no reason not to believe law enforcement. So I, don't think the Hallback family are these evil people. I think this is a horrible tragedy that happened and they lost their loved one and, they really want who did it put away, and they're told by the police and the sheriff's department that it was Stephen, and so they just believe that. Tracy says, what's your take on the alleged phone calls between Brendan and his mom where he admits it really happened and Steve molested him? No. That's where they're trying to push and say that Stephen molested Brendan when they were wrestling around. And no, and it's not that kind of wrestling like people are going to think, like, the creepy uncle that did it. Brendan is really, really into wrestling. I'm sure, if you followed the case, how he's into, I still call it WWF, but WWE. And Stone Cold Steve Austin is his favorite wrestler. And even when I had done a live with Pete Dassey and I asked him, what does he miss doing with Brendan? He missed wrestling with him. So this was more manipulation by Manitowoc to try and get anything. They also tried to get Barb to say that Stephen molested her too. They were trying to get everybody in the family to say that Stephen molested them. So no. And so it was more of them them saying that to Stephen or to Brendan. And then when Brendan would talk to his mom, that's when he's like, yeah, they're saying this and it's not that. Julie says, do you think Brendan saw some of what Bobby had on the computer? That I have no clue. I'm not going to speculate on that. I mean, he obviously would have the opportunity, but I have no idea. Zach said, with all the media attention this is getting and the outreach that this specific case has, I believe that there will be a big break in the case, that the state will have no choice but to take action. Knock on wood. Marge says, is it true that people from Manitowoc are finally speaking up? All I can say is somebody messaged Stephen Avery Project today, and we have referred them on to Kathleen. What that person wants to say, we don't know. We have no idea. I don't want to know because it needs to go to Kathleen. It's not our business. Kathleen can look into it. What are people in Manitowoc saying about this? The same as always. There's the people that think innocent and there's the people that think guilty. And the people who think guilty really wish the stuff would stop being dragged up. They don't like the inconvenience on their town and all that kind of stuff. What was the plastic bag sticking out of the ground that the cadaver dogs hit on? I find it hard to believe that they didn't find anything worthwhile there. I know it would be a long shot, but has KZ used cadaver dogs to do any searches? I don't know what Kathleen has done that isn't public, so we don't know what things else she's done. What was in the bag that I don't know what you're referring to there. I know there was a cell phone at one time found somewhere else, but not Teresa's. So I don't know. Chanda, how are the people of Manitowoc feeling about what KZ and what she is accomplishing with this case? I just answered that partially on, the people who think they're innocent love it, and the people that think guilty hates it. Teresa says, do you know the times of the deleted messages? I'm really bad with numbers and don't recall those. You can go to StephenAveryCase.org and look up Kathleen's filings, because I believe she highlights it in there at some point. Lay says, I'm all the way in Australia and have been following along. I have my fingers crossed that someone who knows the truth comes forward. Knock on wood. Adrian says, I think they should look into Teresa's ex and look into that one kid, and also what about Brendan's stepdad? Katrina says it was Ed Edwards who killed her. I know there are people that go with that theory. I do not think it was Ed Edwards. Sam says, I will send you link via message as you can't click the link I posted. It was from 2016, and the reads and analysis she gets from viewing the photos are amazing. Thank you very much, Sam. Yeah, send that to us, and one of the moderators or I will get it posted. Replies. Chris says, what's for dinner? I don't know. I said to my boyfriend, just get whatever you want. So I'll eat it, whatever he brings home. Another one, what's for dinner? Shauna, watching from Ireland. How do these people sleep at night? The key was clearly planted along with the blood in the RAV4. Free them now. Sarah says, I'm currently watching it right now. I'm totally hooked and ready for it all. I've watched all 10 episodes. I plan on watching them all again and taking notes of the things that stand out to me. And then I will write a summary of that for people who don't read it or don't have time to watch it all, or just want to read. Because I know sometimes people don't like watching stuff and would rather read, or that there's people that would prefer to watch, so it'll be up to everybody on what they want to do. Zachary says, the bullet with the DNA with potential exemplar DNA from the chapstick is just amazing. I don't like how sometimes it hints at Buting and Strang being poor counsel. I thought they did really good. The Brady violations and the incredible amount of BS Kratz pulled throughout made it hard. KZ is fantastic, but I think Jerry and Dean did well too. And I used to be very defensive about Jerry and Dean, and saying that too. And then with my phone calls with Steven, he's told me that he would tell them things that they should be looking into in doing, and they didn't do it. So, and if they had listened to Steven, maybe things would have been different. Brandon says, it's clear that the reason they will never free him is because the state will owe millions. Yes. And I've been talking now for an hour and a half, and as you that were on know, my boyfriend called me. So there's 1,000 comments still after where I'm just at. So I obviously won't be getting to all of your comments or questions. So I'm apologizing right now, but we will do this again. Stacy says, can she get phone records on the bad cops and boyfriend or Bobby? See if there is a connection between them and the cops. Well, she's got phone records. I'm just not sure who else she has. So like you saw in part 2, that you can see that Ryan Hilgas was getting those bunch of calls around the time that the theory is the car was being planted and the calls were being dropped. And because in the salvage yard, there's shoddy reception there. So they have Ryan Hilgas's phone records to show that. So, and they have that, you know, Bobby's phone pinged off this tower. So they must have his records as well. But I don't believe they have any police officers. I don't know, you know, is that a whole different thing in being able to access to law enforcement's records? Kimberly said, Teresa's family wants to criticize making a murderer, but they don't want to say anything or do an interview. All right, and that's, you know, the cool thing in this new part 2, that they put that title card up saying all the people they've contacted to talk to for MAM2, and they refuse to be a part of it. So you can't keep whining, because it's going to get made. You can't, you know, they don't get to determine whether or not it can be made, because this is on Stephen and Brendan's life. But you could have spoke your piece, but you chose not to. And I get why they don't. You know, they want their privacy. I get it. But then don't criticize it, because it's not one-sided and it's not against you. You chose not to participate. Brittany says, just finished watching season 2. My husband and I are sickened by this BS. It's heartbreaking for both families. Not guilty. Kimberly says, Steve Austin needs to go visit him. Maybe he can raise awareness. When part 1 first came out and it was all, you know, so much attention on it, we had reached out to him at some point. So that's a good point, Kimberly. And most people are on Twitter. So all you people that do Twitter, start tweeting at these people. So tweet at Steve Austin and, you know, see if, you know, even if all you can get out of Steve Austin is that he will send an autographed shirt or a picture to Brendan, it'll lift his spirits. You know, he obviously can't get the shirt, you know, but it could be held for him for when he's free. Or maybe could get it so he could visit him. So, because I'm pretty sure Brendan would totally put Steve Austin on his visitors list to come visit. Sam says, Kevin Peterson still thought Stephen was guilty of the rape. I think Colburn found the car and called Lank or Peterson to set the whole thing up. Jean says, the coroner really stuck with me how they threatened her and told her it was due to the lawsuit. I felt sorry that she felt she had to quit the job she loved. I know that's a new tragedy to me in this. And then you also saw Josh Radant when he took Kathleen on through the quarry and showing where he saw the fire, and that police tried to get him to say the fire was bigger than it was, and that the police had said the RAV4 had left and drove through the quarry to go back in. So, Deborah says, someone should go out to the area where her car was spotted by that one guy that called Scott and used metal detectors to see if someone can find her keys. Interesting, because I'm planning a trip there. But I'm not going to say when, because I know there's some people who don't want me there. Kat says, being a mom of 4 sons, I don't think Barb is legit. She's seeing dollar signs. These boys should unite and stay true. Something's off. Sarah says, Teresa's friend said it best, that when it's all said and done, Teresa is gone, and that's not going to change. They want the person who did it behind bars. He never said anything about that they already have Stephen. So to me, that friend has an open mind and that maybe they don't have the right person. That's not what he said. Because I had started to take notes when I watched it originally, and I couldn't believe what he said there. And he said, yeah, I want to know who did it, but that's secondary. And so I was like, that's secondary. So it's okay that Steven's in there and it's secondary for who really did it. So yeah, no, I didn't like what the friend said there. But maybe when I watch it again, maybe I have it wrong, but that's how I heard it and wrote it down. Sorry, it scrolled some. Have a question. And that booted it. Booted it back up, but now I can't get it. Kelsey says, this series has inspired me to go into forensics. I'm so excited to start my journey on this. That's awesome, Kelsey. Hopefully you will be able to help people. Emma says, did they ever find traces of Teresa's clothing? They only found a couple of rivets of her Daisy Fuentes jeans. Items, they found her Palm Pilot and her phone in a burn barrel. There's Lynn replying to somebody. Tammy saying, plain and simple, of your name. If your name has been mentioned and you have nothing to hide, talk to KZ. Scream from the rooftops. I know I would in a heartbeat. If they're that worried, do like Josh Radant did. You saw when he was taking Kathleen on that drive, he had his lawyer with him. I get being worried to talk because, you know, what's one of the biggest things we've learned from making a murderer? Don't speak without a lawyer. Don't ever. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a jaywalking ticket. Do they even do jaywalking tickets anymore? Don't talk without a lawyer. So then go get a lawyer and bring one in with you and do just like Josh Radant did. Can I answer that? The lawyer would tell him yes or no. Do that. Sarah says, I'm right with the theory of Brendan's stepdad. Rosie says, I believe that Stephen is innocent. I know he's innocent. Sharon says, absolutely disgusting how those poor men are still in jail. Seriously, my heart goes out to them both. Release Brendan now. Juliana says, what is Bobby up to now? He has a job, but he has a decent job, and he's got a wife who also has a job, and he's got 2 kids. Rose says, the garage was clean. Well, garage wasn't clean, but it didn't have any evidence in it. Shay says, did they find the car that they thought the rabbits apparently pushed out of the way? Oh, the RAV4. Did they find the car? Are you talking about the red Pinto that the RAV4 pushed out of the way since it blocked the road into the salvage yard? Lori says, I just don't get how this much evidence Stephen is behind bars. Is there a ton of evidence against him that we are not aware of? No. The people on the other side, the guilters, like to say, you know, this is a one-sided, you don't see all the evidence. There isn't any. There's nothing. And I still keep telling people to tell me, what is Stephen's motive? Nobody can give me a motive on why Stephen would kill this girl he barely knew when he was about to come into $400 and something thousand tax-free. His $36 million lawsuit had just started. He has a girlfriend. He has a place to live. He has his freedom. So why is he going to call Auto Trader and say, send that girl that always comes here, and then kill her in the middle of a weekday at an open business that customers could be walking through the yard? That he knew that afternoon he was supposed to be picking up Jody and taking her to her alcohol class. Doesn't fit. Tiffany says, were there no surveillance cameras in the gas station where the witness talked to Coburn? I don't know. Look, he's home. Shanda says, I like Jerry and Dean, but they could have done better by getting experts. And I'm just scrolling down to see if there's a question. Since I'm going to be hanging up now and have dinner. Where is season 2 playing? You have to have Netflix. It's only available on Netflix. Oh, somebody was answering you. And he's here. So I am going to go. Sorry I didn't get to everybody's questions. So that's it for today. This live video will be kept on Stephen Avery Project. You'll be able, if you didn't get to catch it from the beginning, you'll get to post it, you'll get to see it. If you have a question you want me specifically to answer, you can tag me in your comments here. My name is Jax West, or you can tag Stephen Avery Project, and myself or any of the other moderators can answer your question. I don't know the next time I'll do one of these lives. I'll give you notice. So sorry, there's 1,100 comments still to go on here, but time for me to eat dinner. So see you next time.